I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents. Preserving the vision in the Brooklyn Diocese. Principals gather to discuss the future of education.
So far, with the grace of God, it has been a very successful process to really work together to reinvigorate Catholic education and to help not only stabilize our schools, but, God willing, to give them a new sense of vitality.
Plus, as budget talks continue in Albany, we'll look at how it could affect Catholic schools. And celebrating education and educators.
Giving the teachers, the people who are out there, voice is important, and giving those people who have been affected by teachers a chance to share their memories is important.
Well, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. And, you know, it may still be a bit chilly out there, but yes, spring is here, and that means spring break. But no time off for us here at Currents. Tonight we're going to actually have a look at education, and we start with the effort to preserve the vision of Catholic education right here in the Brooklyn Diocese. It's an ongoing process of consolidation and restructuring of schools in the diocese to ensure that they'll remain vital in the years ahead. Now, earlier this week, the diocese held a convocation that brought principals from Catholic schools in Brooklyn and Queens together to discuss the state of education and to plan for the future.
We're at a point where the face of Catholic education is changing, not just here in Brooklyn and Queens, but everywhere. And because I believe so passionately in Catholic education, it's good to be in a leadership position where I can help to decide what that face is going to be.
I think it's productive. I think it's a good opportunity for the principals to come together and just to hear exactly where we are, where we're going as a school community. But it is a very stressful time. It's a stressful time for my school as well as many others. But we're hopeful. We're very hopeful.
Preserving the vision is well underway. We're in our third year of planning, and so far, with the grace of God, it has been a very successful process to really work together to reinvigorate Catholic education and to help not only stabilize our schools, but, God willing, to give them a new sense of vitality.
There's a lot to be done. We have to be better communicators, give more information, have meetings like this, have some teacher sessions, some parent sessions. So I think the more we can communicate and the more information we can give to people, I think the better it will be.
An academy needs 3 to 5 years to establish itself, really to establish itself.
A central piece of preserving the vision is to convert our parochial schools into academies. Now, when you speak of conversion or structural change, I mean, that raises apprehension in a lot of people. But in effect, what it is to take all that's very good about our parochial schools, build on that, and also allow lay leadership to come in, women and men who are competent in so many different areas that you need now to run a very successful school, and allow them a portion of the governance of the school.
I question the success of it because of the board of directors that you need for each academy. Unless you have a strong board, the academy is not going to function as well as it should.
The board of directors, engagement of lay leadership in our schools is an essential part to the success. What's the challenges? The challenges is always to make sure that the boards of directors are trained, prepared to take on their responsibility.
What we discovered in the first year is that in order to allow that sponsorship, that buy-in, to allow everyone a sense of ownership in what's being done, that the process would take a lot longer. But longer is better if the product is better.
The role of the Catholic school is to form educated disciples. It's not just creating wonderful, Catholic, quality, excellent education with scores going off the board. It's primarily what distinguishes us is that we are forming disciples of Jesus.
As we move to the future, we have to create something that is unique about these schools. And so we have to start now enhancing some of the programs so that it makes the academy different from what it was before.
It is a challenge for all of us because my school will be becoming an academy in September of 2012. And we are beginning to work from this April onwards so that it would be successful.
We're working with the marketing team from the diocesan office to implement new marketing strategies. So we're just very hopeful that we continue to grow and that St. Bartholomew will be around for many more years to come.
Our hope is to build on all that's already there that's good and make them even more stable, more excellent, and more vibrant.
And we have much more about education in the Brooklyn Diocese over on our website. Just go to currentsny.net. But stay tuned, there's much more Currents ahead. New plans for the imam behind the proposed Islamic Center near Ground Zero, possibly. We'll have that and the rest of the day's headlines next. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure. Coming up in just a bit, a unique initiative shows us what a difference a teacher makes. But first, let's have a look at today's headlines. A Japanese bishop is calling on Christians around the world to join in a campaign to oppose new construction of nuclear power plants. The auxiliary bishop of Osaka tells the Vatican news agency Fides that the situation at the Fukushima plant should be a lesson for Japan and the entire planet as the nuclear crisis has worsened. High levels of radiation now, more than 3,000 times the normal level, been found in ocean water near the Fukushima plant. Well, the Pope is making his weight felt on the troubled international scene. He's sending an envoy to the Ivory Coast. Rome Reports has the details.
The country of Ivory Coast has seen growing violence after its leader Laurent Gbagbo refused to give up his power since losing the presidential election in November. During the general audience, Benedict XVI announced that he would send a papal envoy to the politically divided nation.
Je lance un appel pressant afin que soit engagé le plus vite possible un processus de dialogue constructif pour le bien commun. L'opposition dramatique rend plus urgent le rétablissement du respect et de la cohabitation pacifique. Aucun effort ne doit être épargné dans ce sens.
The Pope will send Cardinal Peter Turkson Kodwo to carry his message of peace to Ivory Coast. The cardinal is a native of the neighboring country of Ghana and is currently the president of the Pontifical Council for Justice and Peace. According to the UN Refugee Agency, 460 civilians have been killed and nearly 500,000 displaced from their homes in the capital of Abidjan and in the western areas of the country.
Well, back in this country, the battle continues in Wisconsin's courts over a controversial law that strips collective bargaining rights for most state workers. On Tuesday, a judge put the law on hold while she considers a broader challenge to its legality. Earlier in the month, she issued an injunction blocking the Secretary of State from publishing the law, which is required for the law to take effect. That did not stop Wisconsin's Legislative Reference Bureau from publishing it on its website, though. This judge has said now that she would hear more testimony before determining if the law is already in effect. In a statement earlier this month, Wisconsin's Catholic Conference said the common good must be the focus of the budget battle. Testifying before Congress, Cardinal Theodore McCarrick says U.S. bishops remain firmly committed to religious freedom for everyone, not just for Catholics. McCarrick was among those who testified before a Senate subcommittee during hearings on the rights of Muslim Americans. Speaking on behalf of the U.S. Bishops' Conference, McCarrick said Catholics understand the need to bring attention to protecting Muslim civil rights. Well, in related news, the Muslim couple who was the public face of the controversial proposed Islamic Center near the World Trade Center site is considering new plans, an interfaith cultural center. Daisy Khan, the wife of Imam Faisal Abdul Rauf, made the announcement while speaking to reporters at a luncheon on Tuesday. She says the Interfaith Center could be housed at the proposed site for the Islamic Center. House Speaker John Boehner's Washington, D.C. school vouchers bill is up for a vote today. The Obama administration voicing its opposition to the measure, which would revive a school vouchers program in the nation's capital. Now, the bill would provide as much as $12,000 for students to help pay for tuition at private high schools, including Catholic schools. In a statement, the Obama administration says the focus should be on improving public schools for all students. The bill is co-sponsored by Senate Democrat Joe Lieberman. It is the first bill to be sponsored by the new Speaker of the House. Well, it is a different city, but the same reaction for the pro-life group Life Always. Yesterday, a small group of vocal protesters greeted Life Always in Chicago as it unveiled its latest billboard campaign, which features an image of President Obama and the phrase, "Every 21 minutes, our next possible leader is aborted." Life Always plans on posting 30 of the ads around Chicago's South Side. Life Always board member Stephen Broden says his group wants to draw attention to the high abortion rate in the black community, which according to recent data is at 30% nationwide. Now, last month, another Life Always billboard that read "The most dangerous place for an African American is in the womb" was taken down in New York's Soho neighborhood, after only a few days because of fierce public outcry. Arizona, meanwhile, making history, becoming the first state to ban abortions based on race or gender. Governor Jan Brewer signed the measure, which makes it a felony for a doctor to perform an abortion based on the race of or the sex of the unborn child, either one of those criteria. Now, doctors who violate that ban face up to 7 years in jail and the loss of their medical licenses. An update now from Philadelphia, where Archbishop Cardinal Justin Regali has placed 2 more priests on administrative leave. In a statement, the Archdiocese says the moves are a result of ongoing dialogue with Philadelphia's district attorney following a grand jury report on sexual abuse of minors by clergy. The 2 priests are both retired. Earlier this month, Regali placed 21 other priests on leave and publicly expressed his deep sorrow for harm done to victims of sexual abuse. And less than a week after the death of former vice presidential candidate Geraldine Ferraro, another woman who made history in presidential politics has passed away. New York native Ellen McCormick was a pro-lifer who ran for president in 1976 and again in 1980 to bring attention to the issue of abortion. She was a member of a group of housewives who founded New York's Right to Life Party. Well, stay tuned. There's much more currents ahead. When we return, will the state's new budget treat Catholic schools fairly? We'll have a look. Welcome back. Well, Friday is the deadline for legislators in Albany to approve a budget for the new fiscal year. At the state capitol today, lawmakers were working to try to approve a budget plan and have it done early for the first time in nearly 30 years. The state is faced with a $10 billion budget deficit, and Governor Andrew Cuomo proposed big spending cuts to deal with it. Plenty of New Yorkers have issues with the proposals being considered. Demonstrators, including teachers and other public employees, plan to sleep in at the Capitol building to protest the legislation. Well, another group speaking out against some parts of the proposed budget is the New York State Catholic Conference. The group says Governor Cuomo is not treating Catholic schools fairly. Well, to find out more, I spoke by phone earlier today with Jim Coltrera. He's the Director of Education for the New York State Catholic Conference. Thanks so much for joining us here today on Currents. We really appreciate your time, sir.
I'm happy to be with you.
Well, first of all, run down for us some of the issues that the State Catholic Conference had initially with the governor's budget proposal.
Well, Matt, we are facing a crisis in our Catholic school system in particular, and we have a number of issues that we were concerned with, particularly as it relates to the governor's budget. First of all, the state has been now for a number of years delinquent in reimbursing Catholic schools and all religious and independent schools for that matter, delinquent in reimbursing us for 100% of the costs that our schools have incurred in complying with state mandates and participating in state programs. And because of that delinquency, there's been a debt building up to our schools that our schools are owed, well over $250 million. And that's a big problem. The governor is aware of it. The lawmakers are aware of it. The bishops have been pressing lawmakers hard on this issue because when our schools don't see that reimbursement, they are forced to raise tuition to sort of fill the hole that it creates in our school operating budgets. On a short-term basis, just recently the lawmakers in Albany bailed out the MTA and imposed a payroll tax on all employers, including our schools. And in doing so, they lawmakers decided to reimburse public schools and only public schools for that MTA expense. But they did not reimburse religious or independent schools, and our schools are paying now $7 million to support the MTA. Public schools are getting reimbursed, and our schools are not. And once again, we have to pass that cost on to tuition-paying parents, and it's just becoming a burden that they are finding it increasingly difficult to shoulder.
Sure. As this budget negotiation process has moved forward, and we know how these negotiations have gone over the past couple of years here in New York State, it's not been an easy thing at all. But as these negotiations have gone forward and moved on, have you been encouraged by anything that you've seen come out of Albany, come out of the state capitol, or have things kind of been at a stalemate as far as issues that the Catholic Conference has been concerned about when it comes to schools?
Well, I've seen a number of things that are encouraging. First of all, Bishop DiMarzio and the other bishops around the state, Archbishop Dolan, have come to Albany numerous times to press the issue, and because of that, lawmakers, including Governor Cuomo, have become increasingly sensitive to and aware of the plight facing our Catholic schools and our Catholic school families. That awareness is critical, obviously, to beginning to solve some of these financial crises. So that is encouraging. At the same point, however, the state faces a $10 billion deficit, and so it's difficult to solve our funding problems at a time when the state has its own. The governor and the legislative leaders, however, have committed to working with us to try to solve these problems. It's going to take some time. So in the short run, we're going to feel some pain just like everyone else. In the long run, in order for our schools to remain solvent and viable in the future, lawmakers are going to have to solve these problems and to support our families.
Sure. What are you encouraging Catholics in the pews to do as we kind of get down to the wire here as far as the state budget negotiations go? What are you encouraging just the laity to do at this time?
They can go to the Catholic Conference website, and right on the home page is a button there to find your legislator. They simply type in their address. They can find out who their legislators are, and now's the time to call those legislators to say to support Catholic schools. We desperately need that funding. We know times are tough, but it's tough on families as well. That's the most important thing they can do at this point in time is to call their legislators. Right on our website, it's an easy way to do that.
All right. Well, Jim, thanks so much for taking some time out for us here today on Currents. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. I'm happy to do it.
Thanks. Stay tuned. There's much more Currents coming up. Coming up, it's a celebration of learning and a celebration of teachers.
We really think that it's important that stories of teachers who are every day in the trenches, in their classrooms, having an impact on students in their lives, that those are stories worth celebrating.
Well, finally tonight, they may be some of the most unsung heroes in today's world, educators. Earlier on in the program, we heard principals in the Diocese of Brooklyn share their hopes, their concerns, and enthusiasm for Catholic education. But we end tonight by shining a light on teachers and an initiative that's happening across the country to recognize these men and women and the impact that they have on the lives of young people. It kicked off earlier this month in Midtown Manhattan at the 6th Annual Celebration of Teaching and Learning, sponsored by local PBS station, Channel 13.
I am pleased to announce today that the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, together with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, are giving a $1 million grant to StoryCorps to launch the National Teachers Initiative.
I would love to sit down with George Kelly, my English teacher when I was a senior in high school. He really encouraged and supported me in that, and actually I think had a really significant impact on my interest in stories.
And I remember the Sisters of St. Joseph being my first educators. And at that time, you just fell in love with the sisters.
Everyone has had a teacher in their life. Everyone has the story of a teacher. Giving the teachers, the people who are out there, voice is important. And giving those people who have been affected by teachers a chance to share their memories is important.
The StoryCorps believes that the stories of everyday people going about their lives that don't always get told in the media, that aren't always celebrated, deserve to be celebrated. And we really think that it's important that stories of teachers who are every day in the trenches, in their classrooms, having an impact on students in their lives, having an impact on our communities and on our nation, that those are stories worth celebrating.
The goal is to record the impact of our educators on our lives and to record the stories of the educators.
Because they do such a fabulous job in the classroom, we want to give back to them something only public broadcasting would make possible. This is the 6th annual conference that we've made available for teachers from the tri-state area and also from around the country. And this is not something that commercial television would do.
I believe from the moment in time a teacher steps into the classroom, she or he makes a great impact on students just by your personality, what you say and what you do.
We partner with the National Public Radio. We air stories every Friday on Morning Edition. And with the National Teachers Initiative, we will be preparing stories for broadcast from this initiative. Starting in September and going through May of 2012, we'll be airing a number of National Teachers Initiative stories.
From rural areas to urban areas, from East Coast to West Coast and everywhere in between, we're going to hear a lot. And mostly, I believe that we're going to hear that people are trying. They're trying to do well for each other. They're trying to do well for our youth. They're trying to do well for our future.
You're there as much or more than a child's father. Especially me being a man, it's a serious position to be in, and I take it very seriously. And then at the same time, the parents also give me so much trust. So it's a great opportunity for me to really affect a child's life.
And I see it in my classroom. I see wonderful minds being used, and kids that aren't being celebrated in other ways because maybe they don't always get the right answer on the test. They do incredible things, when they're asked to solve a problem. So it's a joy.
There's one particular teacher that I have not told them, but I want to bring them in and say, I'm so sorry I was such a pain in high school, because he had such a lasting impact on my life. I really am very much where I am today. He taught me one of the most important lessons in my life, which I don't think he knows, and it's the broader the mind, the greater the tolerance, and that is directly from him. And I want to take time out to thank him.
This kind of gets me thinking about some teachers that have had an impact on my life. I'm trying to narrow it down to some favorites. Can't really narrow it down to just one, but there is kind of one that sticks out in my mind amongst those favorites, and that's Miss Bradley. I had her in high school for English and literature for 2 years, and she actually graduated with my mom same year in high school, then ended up being my teacher in high school my time around. So it was great, and she's really had an impact on my life. Well, that is it for this edition of Currents. Now, coming up tomorrow, did the New York Times get it wrong? We'll get the story of Mexican Catholics in the Brooklyn Diocese from the Diocese Vicar for Migration. That and more coming up tomorrow night. But until then, be sure to check us out online at currentsny.net. We're also on Facebook and we're on Twitter. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Matt McClure. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great night.